For 2 decades, if you've been in the market for the ultimate all-wheel drive hot hatch without a prestige badge on the bonnet, then the Volkswagen Golf R has been your default choice.
But there's some new competition on the block. The GR Corolla from Toyota has been around for a few years, but it's finally available as an automatic, so it's a direct rival head-to-head for this Golf R. But which is the ultimate master of all trades? That's what we're going to find out in this video. We're going to go through their cabins, see what they like to live with day to day, and what they offer in terms of features.
And we're going to take them for a drive on some really nice rural back roads to find out which is the better all-wheel drive hot hatch.
Let's get started. These two hot hatchbacks are very close on price. $70,490 for the Toyota and $70,990 for the Volkswagen, all before on-road costs. As you see them here, with optional paint on the Toyota that's standard on the Volkswagen, and a panoramic sunroof on the Volkswagen that you can't get on the Toyota, driveway prices come to about $76,700 in Sydney for the Toyota, and about $79,000 for the Volkswagen. On the outside, both cars offer LED headlights and front and rear parking sensors, while the GR Corolla's 18-inch wheels are upgraded to 19-inch wheels on the Volkswagen. We'll go through more detail on interior features and technology a bit later in this review. But if you're looking for a hot hatch of any form, whether it's a Toyota, a Volkswagen or another brand, we've got plenty of new and used cars for sale on Drive Marketplace. Check that out now. Inside the Toyota, and it's fair to say there's a lot more Corolla than GR inside this car, but still it gets the basics right for a performance car. I like this steering wheel. It's quite small, quite sporty in the way it feels, covered in a sort of leather-like material there, with really clicky paddle shifters behind it too. No complaints with the way that steering wheel is designed. The seats are quite good as well. Not the last word in perhaps comfort or support, but they are pretty supportive for what you'd expect of this car. A bit more accommodating than those inside the Golf, but they are pretty Spartan in terms of equipment. There's no power adjustment. You get heating, but no ventilation and no sort of memory or lumbar or anything like that you do get inside the Golf. There is a conventional feel to the way the cabin is designed. You've got a normal gear lever, a normal manual handbrake there as well, just conventional dials for your climate control, conventional buttons, a volume dial. It just feels like a normal car interior. There's not too much in the way of sort of touch sensitive controls or things like that that can annoy you when you're driving this car sort of in a sporty environment. But there's no hiding, it's just not as well equipped as that Golf R. Standard features include an 8-inch infotainment touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, satellite navigation and a rear view camera, a 12.3-inch instrument display, an 8-speaker JBL sound system, leather and suede trim, heated front seats, dual zone climate control, head-up display and wireless phone charging. In short, it's not dripping with luxuries, but it does the job day to day and has everything you need. That also extends to the way you control the car's various modes from the cabin here. You've got a small drive mode selector ahead of the shifter for your sort of normal custom sport, those kind of things, as well as this cool dial for your all-wheel drive system. Left for normal, right for gravel, and then push in the middle for track mode. What that means on the road we'll get to a little bit later. That touchscreen is a fair bit smaller than what you get in the Golf, and to be blunt, it's just simply not as good to use. Things take a bit longer to respond, going between menus and the like. The system is just a bit harder to use in terms of its layout. Things are always in a bit of a confusing menu at times. It's just not quite as intuitive as it should be. Obviously, you do get a volume dial, which is nice, and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto work pretty well. But yeah, it just could be better, and the screen is quite small, especially in this massive bezel that sits around it. I do like the instrument cluster though. It's not quite as customizable as what you get in the Golf, but you can still swap between 3 customizable presets. And then within those, you can set 3 different pods of information. So you can have all-wheel drive on the left, turbo on the right, or fuel economy, music, nav, basically whatever you want inside the car. There's no full screen map, for example, but does do some things in sport mode and normal mode, changing the view and sort of making it feel like a nice gauge cluster in a performance car, which is good. Some more practical things, storage is pretty limited inside this car. This center console is very narrow, even for a small car in this class, especially compared to that Golf. That wireless phone charger up here, it's a little bit rubberized, but at the first sharp corner, your phone is sent into the passenger footwell. It's not great, and yeah, not that practical. 2 cup holders here, they're very small. Your glove box is on the smaller side. It's okay. And there's no sort of center armrest here, so there's nowhere for me to rest my elbow while I'm driving, which is a little bit annoying. And yeah, obviously it is quite light on both amenities as well as USB ports as well. In other ways, it doesn't feel quite as premium as the cabin of that Golf. The materials, there is some soft touch on the dash and things like that. It is a lot of black and a lot of dark materials and dark colors in here, and does feel a lot smaller inside compared to that Golf, especially without the sunroof that you can get on the Volkswagen. Overall, look, the cabin is okay. It does the performance car thing well, I suppose, but as far as a small car goes and the practical side of life, it is behind the pace, whether compared to that Golf R or just the small car category in general.
So into the Golf, and straight away it feels much more like the money that's being asked for it. It's a more spacious cabin, or it feels more spacious. It's lighter, it's airier, but it's still got those sporting touches that we've come to expect. When you're spending the kind of money Volkswagen is asking for this Golf R, you'd expect a healthy list of standard equipment.
The Golf R is the only car here with Trick Matrix LED headlights with adaptive functionality, rather than a simple auto on-off high beam, tri-zone climate control, a larger 12.9-inch touchscreen, but a smaller 10.2-inch driver display, 4 45-watt USB-C ports. It also gets ventilated and power-adjustable front seats, leather upholstery, a heated steering wheel, and a 360-degree camera.
So how does all that feel when you're sitting here in the driver's seat? Well, the seats for starters, they're really comfortable and supportive. There's good bolstering on the sides, and more importantly, there's really nice bolstering around the back here. That's important when you're doing some more spirited driving. The steering wheel's a bit bigger than in the Corolla, but it still feels nice in the hand, and it's got some good heft to it. Nice big paddle shifters. They probably lack the tactility of the Corollas, but they still work nicely. Volkswagen has persisted with these touch-sensitive pads on the steering wheel. Now, they reckon they've calibrated them to be a little less sensitive to accidental inputs, and while that's largely true, I have found that occasionally I'm accidentally hitting the steering wheel heating button, so there's probably a little bit more work required there. Better yet, why not give us traditional switches and toggles? The driving position is a little bit lower than in the Corolla, but I do like to sit up a little bit higher. There's plenty of adjustment for the steering wheel, and you do get this nice view out over the windscreen and over the bonnet onto the road ahead. This new, bigger touchscreen, it's markedly better than the Corolla's system. Sharp graphics, responsive to inputs. It's got these shortcut buttons along the top, and it's got additional shortcut buttons down here underneath the screen that access some of the more commonly used functions. But we still have some gripes. Volkswagen has persisted with these sliders for climate controls and volume, although now, thankfully, they're finally backlit, which means you can see them at night. That wasn't the case previously. During our loan of this car, we've been unable to connect Apple CarPlay wirelessly, and that means we've had to revert to the older style cable. And even then, we have found the screen freezing on occasion, which really isn't good enough for the amount of money that this car is asking for. We do love the premium Harman Kardon sound system, which offers much better sound clarity than what you find in the JBL system in the Corolla. And Volkswagen's new digital instrument cluster is much more configurable than it has been in the past. You can have full screen mapping if you so desire, plus an array of dials and various meters like G-meter, torque distribution, to give you that race car-like feel. Now, just because you're driving a hot hatch doesn't mean it can't be practical, and the Golf delivers. There's some good storage with a wireless smartphone charging pad, deep door pockets, cup holders. This armrest on the center console is adjustable, so if you like your elbows up a bit higher, it's got you covered. There's a big glove box, and everything really does fall nicely to hand. Overall, the Golf R's cabin feels a lot more refined than the Corolla's. The materials are plusher, it feels lighter and airier, and it just feels more like quality. It really is the better cabin.
If rear seat space matters to you, then the GR Corolla is probably not the hot hatch to buy. It is pretty tight and pretty dark and claustrophobic in the back of this car. Knee room is pretty limited, even behind my driving position there. I'm 186 centimeters tall, or 6'1". Headroom, feel my hair brushing the roof. It's not particularly accommodating there. And toe room is okay, but it is generally a very tight car in the back here. There are no air vents. There's only one USB-C port. It's actually shared with the front seats there. You do get some map pockets, but you don't get any sort of door pockets. Just a cup holder here. There's no actual door pocket in the bottom of the door card there. There is a fold-down center armrest, which is good because that middle seat is probably a little bit too tight for anyone that isn't a young kid to use in the back of this car. It's okay, I suppose, if you're using it very occasionally, but yeah, it's definitely not a standout in this class, not even close to that.
There's some keen differences inside the Golf. It's night and day compared to the Corolla, and part of that is down to just how much more visibility you have. These side windows are a lot bigger, and you can just see more out the front, out the sides. It just feels lighter and airier in the second row. There's also more knee room, leg room and toe room, and as you can see, while it's not the last word in spaciousness, there's still plenty of room. I'll show you vision now of Alex sitting in the back here, so you get an idea of how much space there is. The Golf also trumps the Corolla in terms of second row amenities, as well as distinct climate controls, which is great for second row passengers. You get these mobile phone holders, you get map pockets, door pockets that can take bottles, plus 2 cup holders in a fold down armrest. Plus, underneath this armrest is a ski port, so it really is an easy win for the Golf in the second row.
Boot space is another key difference between the cars. 213 litres of room in the Toyota behind the rear seats, compared to 341 litres in the Volkswagen. Neither is a litre in underfloor storage, but you can see there's a fair bit more in the Golf around the subwoofer compared to the all-foam Toyota.
Volkswagen and Toyota have taken 2 very different approaches to their performance engines.
That's right, that Volkswagen Golf R, it's a very tried and tested formula as far as high performance Volkswagens are concerned. That 2-litre turbo 4-cylinder, it's called the EA888 if you're a Volkswagen nerd, has been in those kind of cars for close to 20 years now. It's a known quantity in terms of that engine, but has been obviously updated and evolved over the years. 245 kilowatts and 420 newton meters in that latest Golf R, and it's got a petrol particulate filter in the exhaust to reduce emissions and also get at that flagship tune in this latest 8.5 Golf R. Now Volkswagen says that version of the engine can now run on 95 octane premium unleaded rather than 98 compared to the old car, as well as this Corolla GR. But oddly, the fuel door still says 98, so go figure. But Volkswagen says you can do 95 octane in that car. Now, when you're driving the car in a performance environment, in race mode, there are some tricks up the sleeve of that Golf that it can employ to sort of reduce some of the turbo lag you might get otherwise. It can keep the turbo spinning a little bit when you're sort of coming on and off the throttle, again, to reduce lag when you come back on it. And also, it's got a cool emotion start feature. You hold down the start button for a few seconds, it revs it at 2,500 RPM to give you a bit more of a bark on startup, as long as it doesn't piss off your neighbours. As for this Corolla, 1.6 litres, so a bit smaller engine, but also 3 cylinders rather than 4, and obviously still turbocharged in this car. This engine was developed for the World Rally Championship, as well as a smaller GR Yaris, but obviously it has rubbed off in the bigger 5-door Corolla. 221 kilowatts is the power output, so a bit less than the 245 in the Golf, and a bit less torque as well, 400 here versus 420 newton meters in that car. But really, there are 2 big differences elsewhere in the drive experience. The transmission, number 1, that Golf is a 7-speed dual clutch automatic. This is an 8-speed torque converter automatic in the Corolla. There is another mechanical difference to these cars, and that's the all-wheel drive system. And warning, it does get a little bit technical. Both cars are all-wheel drive, but they operate very differently. The Golf R uses on-demand all-wheel drive, capable of sending up to 50% of the engine's torque to the rear axle at any time. From there, 100% of that 50% can then be sent to either rear wheel, allowing more torque to be sent to the outside tyre to help it rotate through corners, or in drift mode, kick the car into a power slide. The GR Corolla almost always powers its rear axles, and can send more of it there, through 3 different drive modes. 60-40 front to rear split in normal, 50-50 in gravel, or a variable ratio from 60-40 to 30-70 in track mode. It works by gearing the rear axle faster than the front, and fitting a clutch pack in the centre of the car to apportion torque, as well as keep the front and rear wheels spinning at the same speed, to prevent the axles binding up. For more detail on how this works, and a bit more of the mechanical specs of each car, read the full written review at Drive.com.au.
But that's enough of the tech talk. Let's find out what all this means out in the real world on the road.
All right, on the road in these 2 hot hatches, and look, they're pretty closely matched on paper in terms of power outputs and torque, but Rob, that Golf R feels significantly faster than this in practice.
And look, I think it is, Alex. I seem to recall a 0 to 100 of 4.6 seconds. Not sure where the Corolla sits, but I think it starts with a 5.
Around 5.5.
5.5, there you go. They certainly go about how they exploit that acceleration in different ways.
Definitely, this GR Corolla, you've got to work a bit harder to get the performance out of it. Obviously, it is still quick for what it is, but the Golf R, you find yourself approaching bends much faster than you expected. It's just so effortless and just so easy to spin that engine out to redline. It's a bit quieter as well, I've noticed, that Golf R, especially compared to the GR Corolla, with this sort of offbeat thrum that 3 cylinders produce. How's the noise in there as you're sitting there in the car on the road?
Look, it's pretty quiet, Alex, and that's possibly one of its minor drawbacks. There's a certain charm and appeal to the GR Corolla. It does have that aggressive mongrel engine note, and that's really lacking in the Golf. Now, you can dial it up through drive modes, but it's still not as aggressive sounding as the Corolla. I do love the Corolla's growl and menace.
100%, but I will say one thing the Golf does do better, and I'm noticing here as I sort of going through corners, I'm leaning on the throttle a bit more, is the gearboxes. Now this is a torque converter in the Corolla, the Golf is a dual clutch, and look, the Corolla is great around town during parking. It's super easy, there's no hesitation, there's no rollback or anything like that. It just works like a slightly doughy, in a good way, gearbox, but when you're out here really putting the car under load, I just don't think it's quite as snappy as it needs to be.
No, that's right, Alex. You mentioned parking and the rollbacks. Unfortunately, the Golf, it's endemic to DSGs, and it's not awful in this by a long stretch, but there are those moments of hesitation from standstill that can be a little bit frustrating. But you're right, on the move, on the go, I'll take this DSG every day. It's sharp, it's snappy, it's responsive, and it just does exactly what you want it to when you want it to.
That's right, and look, with the car locked in manual plus mode, which is part of the race mode settings in the car, it won't upshift when you hit red line, it bangs off the limiter, it does exactly what you'd expect. It doesn't get in the way and do anything that you wouldn't expect in the car. The Corolla does the same, you can set it up to also bang the limiter and sort of be a very race car style gearbox. This gearbox has been developed extensively on the racetrack by Toyota engineers and race drives and so on. But yeah, there's just no hiding the fact this is a torque converter, that's a dual clutch, and I suppose they each have their own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, they have their own charms and definitely their own strengths and weaknesses. I'd prefer the DSG in this to the torque converter, but I like that snappy responses to inputs, like especially when you're using the paddle shifters in M plus mode, which is, as you say, the kind of manual override in this transmission.
Now, Rob, we're approaching some corners. Let's chat about the way these cars behave when you get them in a more sort of dynamic situation. Now, obviously they're both sporty, they both have the kind of character you'd expect of fast all-wheel drive performance cars. But this GR Corolla just feels a little bit sharper in some ways, a bit more sort of analog, I suppose. It's got a heavier feel to the steering. It's pretty direct, not the most road feel, but pretty direct, but it just feels heavier. The chassis feels a bit more purposeful than that Golf R, which is sort of just a bit kind of easy mode in the way that it just builds speed and handles a twisty road.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. I like the steering feel in this. It's not too heavy, not too light, just right, to give it the old breakfast cereal reference. But it's responsive and it does exactly what you want it to. I like the way this chassis works. It is a bit softer than the Corolla, partly down to the adaptive dampers and the dynamic chassis control. But that doesn't detract from what it is, and it really is quite purposeful. Like it takes you by surprise, though. You mentioned earlier that it's very easy in the way it extracts its performance, and that's true of the chassis as well and the suspension. You don't realize how fast or how dynamic it is until you're driving really quickly, and then it transforms into something else.
And I reckon the ride really helps that. Obviously you said adaptive dampers in that car, just passive dampers in this Corolla, which has pretty much a baseline firm all the time setting. It's, still livable, I'd say, around town, but it's not what you'd call supple. But there is a trick up that Golf R sleeve on a country road that lets you get the best of the performance in terms of handling and speed, but also keeping your spine in one piece.
Yes, and I believe that's buried inside race mode. Opt for the special mode, which has been designed for the Nürburgring of all places. And what that does, it allows the transmission, the engine, everything else to be set into the most brutal settings, yet it still keeps the suspension in its softest settings.
And look, you notice when you're on a really twisty road that's really bumpy, as one of our favourite loops that we use all the time here at Drive is, it doesn't unsettle the car in mid-corner, sort of potholes and things that may send a shock through the GR Corolla. Again, not an overwhelming shock that sort of unsettles the car, but it's just so supple, so composed, and again, you just sort of forget how quickly you're going and how quickly it can just cover ground. That's sort of always been the appeal of the Golf R, I suppose, being an all-round fast car all the time, whether you're in the city or on a country road. But yeah, the adaptive dampers really make a big difference there.
They do indeed. Around town, this is certainly very comfortable with the dampers in their softest setting, and you could easily drive it every single day over even the worst roads that Sydney has to offer. It's just comfortable, and that's exactly what you want.
That Mark 8 Golf R also continued with that 8.5 facelift that you're driving there, has the cool rear torque vectoring diff that really helps it power out of corners. There's less of the sort of understeer that you'd get in older Golf Rs that were more traditional, more conventional in their all-wheel drive layout, but it really helps the car rotate, powers out of bends. There's a bit of, if obviously in a closed course, you can put it into drift mode and get a bit of tail out action, but even on a public road, you can feel it really rotating and moving under you. Now this GR Corolla, obviously the all-wheel drive system is also rear biased, and if you put it in truck mode with a button there, again, physical button, great to see, like the touch buttons a lot of the time in the Golf R. But it also, rotates out of corners, works with you. It's perhaps a bit more natural in the way that the rear sort of steps out, but again, both are great cars. They don't feel, overly understeery. They grip well. The tyres on both are excellent. Bridgestone's on that Golf, and Yokohama's on this Toyota. And both are great to drive on a country road, but that Golf is just a little bit easier to get the best out of it, which I suppose will appeal to a lot of buyers.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But let me ask you this. Which one do you think is the more engaging driver's car?
The GR Corolla, for sure. It feels more analog, more purposeful in the weighting of the steering, the brakes, the general feel of the car. But Rob, at the end of the day here, on a country road, driving it home as well, parking it around town, which one would you drive away with?
I would take this Golf R every day of the week. I love the Corolla. I love its aggressive, raw appeal. But in terms of having a car that you can live with every single day, one that you can drive sedately around town, just in your everyday driving duties, and then take out on the weekend and have a little bit of fun with, then for me it's the Golf R hands down.
Completely agree. It's just a better all-round car. Even things like it's quieter over rough road, the stereo is better. It's just a nicer car to live with, but there's no compromise when you get it on a nice road, push it hard, and it's just a fantastic all-round package.
Absolutely. It's a very rewarding car to drive.
All right, Rob, let's park it up.
Yep. Let's talk about the verdict. I think it's fair to say that these two cars will appeal to a different set of buyers. What do you reckon, Alex?
Exactly right. The GR Corolla is a more analog car, more old school in its feel. You've got to work harder to extract its performance. And it's a bit more of the Hyde side of the Jekyll and Hyde equation. It's sort of, there's more of it on more of the time, but the Golf R beats in every objective metric, and I think that's why it wins this comparison today. It's roomier inside, better tech, more equipment for the money, especially given these are effectively the same price on the road. It's faster, handles better, it rides better, it's quieter. It's just a better car overall, everywhere that you can count on paper, and that's why it is a clear winner of this comparison today. But there are still some areas on this car that we think can be improved.
Exactly right. We had a few niggles with the infotainment screen, which really shouldn't happen in this day and age. Plus, we'd love some more noise from the engine, which is why we'd option the Warmanau package that brings a whole lot more noise, plus some other bits and pieces that will transform this into a truly excellent performance car.
What do you think of these two cars? Is the Golf R too tame for your liking, or is the GR Corolla a little bit too hardcore? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, why not give us a like, help us beat the YouTube algorithm, and to watch an earlier manual version of this car go head to head with the Civic Type R, click up there to watch our full comparison video.